During my severe illness, Luna removed my oxygen tube. I am Luna's lapdog. She got pregnant with a scoundrel's child, and I helped her find an abortion provider, staying by her side all night. Her family fell on hard times, and I quickly purchased a mansion overnight to welcome her. I spoiled her like a princess and gave her a dowry worth millions. When I was lying on my deathbed, she leaned in close to my ear, her voice as soft as smoke. All these years, you were just an ATM to me, but remembering the password was too much trouble, so I had to make you spit out all the money the hard way. After saying that, she laughed and removed my oxygen tube. After my death, she, along with my brothers, devoured my entire fortune. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day when she came to me to have an abortion. At the moment my oxygen tube was pulled out, I saw my long-lost fiancée. She was wearing a stunning red dress, but her expression was ice cold. It wasn't until she tossed the oxygen tube aside that Luna managed to force a smile. Marriage and such things are too cheap. Only your money is eternal. I choked and turned purple, my soul departing, only to find two men standing outside the hospital room when I woke up. The leader of the two embraced Luna's waist, and she melted in his arms, resisting and welcoming him at the same time. It's not good to be seen by others. What's to fear? This hospital belongs to me now. I held back my nausea to look at the man's face and realized he was my best friend. With a casual pinch, he made my chaste and virtuous fiancée go weak in the knees. After 20 years of friendship, I had pampered Luna to the heavens, but she wouldn't let me touch her. I raged and cursed with all my might, but I could only watch them flirt shamelessly. I watched them divide my property and swallow up the business empire I had built painstakingly over a decade. I watched Luna send my ashes to my parents abroad, driving them to a heart attack and death in a foreign land. I hated myself for misjudging people. I hated Luna for being heartless, and I hated that fate favored the wicked. Perhaps hearing my inner thoughts, this time, fate gave me a chance to start over. I was reborn, back to the day when Luna asked me to accompany her for an abortion. She supported her swollen belly, her figure distorted like a balloon. Seeing me, the woman instantly turned red in the eyes. Tom, I'm in a difficult situation. Can you help me? The child's father was a small-time thug she dated in high school. Back then, the two of them were reckless and were caught being intimate in the library, and the White family hushed up the incident with money. Mr. White always doted on his daughter, but when she regained her freedom and couldn't find the small-time thug, her first thought was of me. Our friendship of over a decade was not worth mentioning in front of her so-called love. She angrily pointed at my nose. Tom Brown, how can you be so despicable? Even if you drive you away, I will never be with you even if I die. Before I could explain, she slapped me across the face. David Smith's steel wire ring cut my eyelid, leaving a long scar. Luna saw the blood and panicked. At that time, I was a foolish lapdog, and I actually explained the situation to her, enduring the humiliation in the process. Mr. White gave David a huge sum of money to make him leave Sea City forever. The other party gladly accepted the offer and disappeared, but Luna still didn't believe it. Even after getting Mr. White's confirmation upon her return, she still thought it was my presence that caused her to lose this sincere and precious love. A few years later, David squandered all the money. He appeared with a group of hooligans, acting like the big boss, and once again caught Luna's eye. That night, she surrendered herself to him. Then, David used the excuse of arranging for the child and took $2 million to run away. Luna was angry and frustrated but dared not tell the White family. She could only think of secretly disposing of the child. She always knew I liked her and had a private hospital, and she wouldn't want to make her dirty laundry public. I arranged the abortion for her and kept everything secret. In the end, she labeled me a murderer and jealous and used it to morally blackmail me for the rest of my life. I touched the long scar on my eyelid and wished I could punch myself. How could I have been so blind to fall for someone like her? Now, Luna was standing at the door with her swollen belly, her eyes red. Tom, I'm in a difficult situation. Can you help me? As soon as she said that, she lifted her leg and walked in, confident that I wouldn't refuse. I reluctantly let her in, and I poured her a cup of hot water, then looked at her swollen belly with difficulty. What is this? Luna's face turned pale and then she grabbed my hand. David. He ran away. Tom, I came here to ask for your help with the abortion. Now I can only trust you. If my dad finds out about this, he will cut off my inheritance. Please, help me. I held back my nausea and pretended to look sad and deeply affectionate. After a long time, I nodded reluctantly. I warned myself not to take the easy way out and make Luna die too easily. I had to watch her struggle and suffer, crush her bones, and then step on her heart into the mud to somewhat relieve the hatred in my heart. I deliberately hired the best obstetrician gynecologist in Sea City. I wanted him to administer enough anesthesia to put Luna to sleep. Watching the confused woman, I felt a pang of heartache. I just don't want you to suffer. How about we sleep it off and start over? Luna's expression improved a bit. She shook my hand and thanked me. I knew Tom was the best to me. I will always remember you. I chuckled inwardly and pushed her into the operating room. Then, I signaled to the surgeon. The surgery went smoothly, and when Luna woke up, I had already bought her favorite chestnut cake. Without the child, she felt relieved, and she looked much brighter. Tom, your doctor is so good. I didn't feel any pain. Among our group of friends, you are the most outstanding. No wonder my dad likes you so much. She looked around and seemed a bit longing. Then, her phone lit up. Luna saw the caller ID and immediately became nervous, covering the screen with her hand. I'll be right back. Even if I heard only a few words, I knew who was on the other end. It was my good friend, David. Reflecting on the little hints I had gathered over the years, I began to suspect. From the moment David entered our lives, everything about Luna tilted. Since David entered our lives, everything about Luna has been leaning towards him. Previously, girls who used to stand in my way now followed him around like puppies. Even when David teased her as a copycat, she still smiled and said, "I'm willing." During a school basketball game, I was knocked down by David, and blood spilled everywhere, but Luna held his bruised hand and shouted for the school nurse. She even scolded him right then and there. Despite her usual sweetness, "If you leave any permanent damage, you won't get away with it." She only gave me a brief concern when she saw me bleeding. Even though David never treated her well, even though she dated other guys, Luna's bold preference for him remained unchanged. On the day of our college graduation party, everyone got drunk except for David. We, the privileged ones, had drivers waiting for us, but he used the excuse of being on the way to pick up Luna. The next day, Luna was wearing a men's suit. When I asked her, she stammered, "It's a unisex style. We've graduated, so I thought I should be more mature." I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I can't help but laugh. From David to David, and then to the other men, she never looked my way. I was just her backup plan, the so-called ATM guy. Like now, even though Luna had just had surgery, she was still in pain, yet she dragged herself to answer David's call. When she came back, she looked worried. "Tom, David started his own company, but things don't seem to be going well. He wants to ask for your help. Do you have time?" I found it amusing. David never really cared about me. Otherwise, he would have asked me personally. Plus, I could see through this. It was all about boosting his image. With Brown family's strong connections in our city, if I stepped in, those trying to get close to Brown family would naturally elevate David. I wanted to find an excuse to decline. "I'm quite busy with work these days." But Luna suddenly glared at me. "Are you afraid he's better than you? Tom, don't be so petty." She had completely changed her demeanor and had an intimidating look on her face, as if my refusal would be unforgivable. I couldn't help but ask. When I asked him for help with a few math problems back then, "Did you ever say that studying was my business? Why are you blaming me now?" Her eyes immediately welled up with tears, and she clutched her hands in embarrassment. After a long silence, I eventually gave in and agreed to her request. I couldn't afford to push too hard. I arranged for the best nutritionist for Luna, and she rested for a few days, returning to her usual vibrant self. On the day she was ready to leave the hospital, she invited me to have dinner together. Halfway through our meal, I casually mentioned David. "You and David seem to have gotten very close recently." As soon as I said that, Luna turned pale. Without waiting for her response, I added, "It's great that you're getting along, but if he finds out that you're in my hospital, it might not end well." Luna left the table in a hurry, confirming my suspicions. David was unaware of her pregnancy. He wouldn't tolerate anyone else interfering, no matter if he had a wife or if Luna was just a lover. On the day of the surgery, I dropped hints about it, and David couldn't resist being lured out. It seemed their affair had been going on for a long time. I smiled. If he liked Luna so much, as a friend, I should show some support. So why not give them a little surprise? On the day of our appointment, David made a grand show at the company entrance. Reporters from various TV stations rushed to cover the scene, creating a commotion, but I wasn't going to let him have the upper hand. Although we had agreed to meet downstairs at 2, I arrived with my team upstairs at 1. I knew Luna too well. She wouldn't want to lose David. Her support. She would do everything to please him. Sure enough, as soon as we approached the meeting room, we heard some unpleasant sounds. Reporters were excited, rushing forward with their cameras, and they even broke down the door. The woman's screams stopped abruptly. Then, there were sharp cries, and Luna was frantically trying to put her clothes back on. David shouted angrily, "Who let you in? What are you filming? Get out!" He no longer had the suave demeanor he used to have. Suppressing my disgust, I awkwardly stepped forward. "Luna, David, you!" As if awakening from a dream, I quickly dismissed the reporters and warned them repeatedly to delete the video and keep their mouths shut. In the past, I would have easily handled such an embarrassing situation, but when everyone left, I felt disheartened. When did all of this start? Did you ever consider Ada's feelings? Ada was David's wife. When I mentioned her name, Luna and David visibly panicked. You could say that without Ada, there would be no David today. He was initially just an illegitimate child hidden from the public eye. He only became part of the Smith family because he married into Ada's prestigious family. If Ada divorced David, his life would be over. Boom! I didn't expect David to kneel so quickly. His usual confident demeanor had disappeared, and he was on the verge of tears. "Tom, As a brother, I'm begging you, please don't tell Ada about this. She's still abroad for her research, and I don't want her to get upset over this. If he really cared about her, he wouldn't have maintained this illicit relationship for so long. I glanced at Luna, and she cried while tugging at my pants. It's all my fault. I had a little too much to drink today and mistook David for you. Tom, I love you. Did she really think I was that naive? I couldn't smell alcohol on her breath. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes and sighed in reluctance. I can help you, but if Ada finds out that I knew and didn't inform her. David made a firm promise. I heard you're planning to bid for the East City property. I assure you, Smith family won't compete against you. Deal. I didn't expect you to be so cunning. In the coffee shop, the woman flipped her curly hair. She had fair skin, beauty, and long legs. Even her cold gaze had a touch of charm. It was a pity she had married David. I pulled myself together and asked, "Why are you willing to help me?" Ada stared at me, her gaze deepening. "When I married David, it was because he reminded me of my savior. But now, it seems you're the one." While Smith family was busy dealing with David and trying to salvage their losses, I quickly expanded my territory. I asked the university dormitory supervisor, Wang Cheng, to serve as my proxy and registered several companies. He had natural talent for managing businesses efficiently. Soon, a new real estate rising star appeared in our city, offering innovative designs, affordable prices, and stealing several projects from Smith family. Wang Cheng helped me sow discord among them, waiting for the next round of turmoil. During our conversation, Mr. White called. White family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Over the years, White family couldn't keep up with the times, and without a reliable successor, their decline was inevitable. But when I heard the buyer's last name was Zhong, my eyebrows twitched. Zhong among the men Luna had been involved with. One of them happened to be named Zhong Chen. I pinched my eyebrows. It seemed that the conference room incident had made Luna realize that she was just a pawn, and David couldn't provide her with the security she desired. Her ambitions were now leaning more towards money and power. No one could have anticipated that White family's beloved daughter would be more venomous than a snake. She didn't spare even her own parents. In the previous life, White family's ending was indeed miserable. Mr. White was implicated in a construction site murder case and eventually jumped off a building in despair, while her mom succumbed to depression. And Luna? She was lounging in my carefully arranged villa, taking rose-scented baths, drinking wine, and demanding the latest diamond necklace. I admired her and was grateful as well. The East City property was a massive opportunity, and even though it was only a small piece of the cake, it was enough. I couldn't help but ask, "Why are you willing to help me?" Ada stared at me, her gaze deepening. "When I married David, it was because he reminded me of my savior. But now, it seems you're the one." While Smith family was busy dealing with David and trying to salvage their losses, I quickly expanded my territory. I asked the university dormitory supervisor, Wang Cheng, to serve as my proxy and registered several companies. He had natural talent for managing businesses efficiently. Soon, a new real estate rising star appeared in our city, offering innovative designs, affordable prices, and stealing several projects from Smith family. Wang Cheng helped me sow discord among them, waiting for the next round of turmoil. During our conversation, Mr. White called. White family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Over the years, White family couldn't keep up with the times, and without a reliable successor, their decline was inevitable. But when I heard the buyer's last name was Zhong, my eyebrows twitched. Zhong among the men Luna had been involved with. One of them happened to be named Zhong Chen. I pinched my eyebrows. It seemed that the conference room incident had made Luna realize that she was just a pawn, and David couldn't provide her with the security she desired. Her ambitions were now leaning more towards money and power. No one could have anticipated that White family's beloved daughter would be more venomous than a snake. She didn't spare even her own parents. In the previous life, White family's ending was indeed miserable. Mr. White was implicated in a construction site murder case and eventually jumped off a building in despair, while her mom succumbed to depression. And Luna? She was lounging in my carefully arranged villa, taking rose-scented baths, drinking wine, and demanding the latest diamond necklace. I admired her and was grateful as well. The East City property was a massive opportunity, and even though it was only a small piece of the cake, it was enough. But I couldn't help but wonder, "Why are you willing to help me?" Ada stared at me, her gaze deepening. "When I married David, it was because he reminded me of my savior. But now, it seems you're the one." While Smith family was busy dealing with David and trying to salvage their losses, I quickly expanded my territory. I asked the university dormitory supervisor, Wang Cheng, to serve as my proxy and registered several companies. He had natural talent for managing businesses efficiently. Soon, a new real estate rising star appeared in our city, offering innovative designs, affordable prices, and stealing several projects from Smith family. Wang Cheng helped me sow discord among them, waiting for the next round of turmoil. During our conversation, Mr. White called. White family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Over the years, White family couldn't keep up with the times, and without a reliable successor, Their decline was inevitable, but when I heard the buyer's last name was Jean, my eyebrows twitched. Jean among the men Luna had been involved with. One of them happened to be named Jean Chen. I pinched my eyebrows. It seemed that the conference room incident had made Luna realize that she was just a pawn, and David couldn't provide her with the security she desired. Her ambitions were now leaning more towards money and power. No one could have anticipated that White family's beloved daughter would be more venomous than a snake. She didn't spare even her own parents. In the previous life, White family's ending was indeed miserable. Mr. White was implicated in a construction site murder case and eventually jumped off a building in despair, while her mom succumbed to depression. And Luna? She was lounging in my carefully arranged villa, taking rose-scented baths, drinking wine, and demanding the latest diamond necklace. I admired her and was grateful as well. The land in Dongqing is like a big cake, and even though I'm just getting a small piece of it, it's enough. But I couldn't help but ask, why are you willing to help me? Ada stared at me, her eyes deepening. When I married David initially, it was because he reminded me of my savior. But now, it's you who resemble him. While the Smith family was busy dealing with David and trying to recover their losses, I started rapidly expanding my territory. I enlisted the help of Wang Qing, the university dormitory head, to act as my proxy and registered several companies. He had a natural talent for managing them efficiently. Before long, a rising star in real estate emerged in Haicheng, offering innovative solutions at affordable prices, snatching away several projects from the Smith family. Wang Qing helped me rub salt into their wounds, preparing for the next round of trauma. As we toasted and chatted, Mr. White called. The White family was facing bankruptcy risk. Over the years, the White family had fallen behind the times and lacked a reliable successor, so their decline was inevitable. But when I found out that the person trying to acquire them was named Zhong, my brow furrowed. Zhong among the men Luna had entangled with. There happened to be one named Zhong Chen. I pinched my brow. It seemed that the meeting room incident had made her realize that she was just a pawn and that David couldn't provide her with the security she craved. Her ambitions now leaned more toward money and power. No one could have expected that the beloved daughter of the White family would be more treacherous than a snake. She wouldn't spare even her own biological parents. In the previous life, the White family's ending was truly tragic. Mr. White was implicated in a construction site murder case and ultimately jumped to his death in despair, while her mom succumbed to depression. And where was Luna during all of this? She was lounging in my carefully arranged villa, taking a rose bath, sipping wine, and coquettishly telling me that she wanted the latest diamond necklace. First, I had Wang Qing investigate. As expected, the acquirer was Zhong Chen. The White family was in dire straits, urging Luna to seek my help, but she remained unfazed, dressed in the latest designer clothes and carrying a globally limited edition handbag. With a syrupy voice, she called me Tom. She didn't say a word about the White family, just sniffled. I don't want to put you in a difficult position. My dad offended someone he shouldn't have, so don't get involved. During our conversation, she received a call. Immediately after, her phone dropped to the floor. Luna trembled uncontrollably. Her face turned pale. To Tom, it's over. Zhong Chen had his leg broken by someone. The White family, this piece of meat that so many coveted, had more powerful contenders than the Zhong family. But in the previous life, Luna had kept the news under wraps, allowing her and Zhong Chen to monopolize it. I had to admire her cunning. To claim even more, she manipulated 4 men, each of whom lost billions of assets. However, this time, I exposed everything. David, such a proud man, would surely be livid upon discovering that his woman had an affair with another man and seized all their wealth. Wouldn't he? Sure enough, when Luna found me again, she had lost quite a bit of weight. With red-rimmed eyes, she looked at me. Tom, David wants to get back at me. You won't just stand by, will you? I looked at the strawberry mark on her neck, as if it had been bitten. I coldly chuckled. He'll be sentimental. No, he'll destroy me. Please, Tom, he's insane. I remained unmoved. Luna clenched her fists and suddenly leaned close to my face, something she had never allowed in all these years. Now, she was completely vulnerable until Ada appeared at the right moment, smiling calmly. Am I interrupting something? I immediately pushed Luna away. She fell to the ground, stunned, as if she couldn't believe it. Tom, you pushed me. I remained silent. After a while, Luna clenched her fists, cried, and ran out. Ada patted my sleeve, teasing, it's time to proceed with our plan. You don't feel sorry for her, do you? I furrowed my brow immediately. Impossible. The woman seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and then showed me the recent reports on the Smith family. They had recently suffered a major loss, and the subsidiary companies managed by David were on the verge of collapse. With Wang Cheng's targeted actions, the Smith family was facing numerous challenges, and they were hemorrhaging assets. Luna and David were now bitter enemies, and she was bound to use this opportunity to bring him down quickly. When she made her move again, it would be time for me to close in. I contacted the last person in the address book, Dr. Lee, who had performed the abortion on Luna in her previous life. While waiting, I kept myself busy. I first brought my parents back from abroad and spent time with them. then visited the countryside. Many years ago, I was kidnapped by my enemies and thrown into these remote mountains. It was during that time that I met David. Despite growing up in the same village, he was always at the top of his class, dressed neatly, and had an extraordinary demeanor. We became sworn brothers, and I treated him like a real sibling. Even when my family found me and tried to take me back to Haicheng, I helped him. My parents supported him through college, provided him with assets to start his business, and introduced him to the upper circles, where he met Ada. Perhaps that was when his ambitions began to swell. I suddenly remembered a joke he made on the night of our graduation. "Tom, I've always been number one from childhood to adulthood. Just wait, I'll surpass you soon." He wanted to outdo me in everything, even women. This time, I wanted to see how he felt when his own dog bit him. Now that I had raised him, Luna made a shocking move. She wore a heavy wedding dress and invited me to a hotel. The opulent setup resembled a wedding scene, and there were many prominent families from Haicheng in attendance. Before I could react, Luna knelt down on one knee and looked at me with genuine eyes. "Tom, I've been waiting for you to confess your feelings to me all these years. But now, I can't wait any longer. I love you the most, and I want to be with you. Can I?" Women proposing was a rare occurrence, especially in high society. In front of so many people, Luna blushed, but her body remained rigid. She was gambling. She gambled that I was still as foolish as before, unwilling to embarrass her, unwilling to see her suffer. I glanced around. My gaze landed on David, who had a fierce and resentful expression, grinding his teeth and furrowing his brow, as if he could crush a fly. Not enough. It still wasn't enough. I furrowed my brow and tried to persuade Luna. "Get up first, and we can discuss this privately." But she didn't move. Her eyes filled with entreaty. "Tom, I've chosen you for my entire life. If you don't agree, I won't get up." She hung her head, appearing humble and defeated. In the past, I would have already relented. However, memories from my previous life echoed in my ears, with two mocking sentences. "Marriage and such is beneath me. Only your money is eternal." That face overlapped with the one in my line of sight, making me clench my fists involuntarily. "Luna, weren't you saying that marrying me was beneath you? Why are you now crying and begging to marry me?" Luna panicked. She couldn't believe that I had already seen through her thoughts and ruthlessly exposed them. Her hands trembled, and her heart quivered. She forced herself to stay calm and reluctantly put on a smile, until the sound of a baby's cry echoed through the hall. A familiar figure walked in, completely throwing her off balance. David was holding the child, his face full of mockery. "My dear, are you in such a hurry to get married now? What about the child you were carrying for 9 months?" The crowd erupted in shock, especially when they saw the baby, who bore a striking resemblance to Luna. David held the baby up to the cameras, his voice filled with bitterness. "I've worked hard to raise our child, giving you so much money every month, and you go and seduce other men. Do you have no conscience?" The flashlights went wild. The women in the crowd couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the baby, who looked almost identical to Luna, and turned their gazes towards me. "Isn't the child clearly?" I furrowed my brow. Could it be that someone tampered with things while I was away? Luna's venomous gaze shot straight at David in the crowd, and then she rushed towards the stage, wildly attacking him. "You scum! It's all you're doing, isn't it? You set a trap for me with the doctor, using this child as leverage. You never loved me. You've been using me from the beginning." The bewildered crowd hadn't fully grasped the situation yet, but when they saw David forcefully kicking her to the ground, they gasped. He anxiously dragged a pale-faced Ada away with him. "Ada, don't listen to her nonsense. She's trying to drag me down." However, Ada paid him no attention. She just stared at the disheveled woman. "Are you saying my husband cheated on me? Food can be eaten randomly, but words can't be spoken carelessly. But if you can provide evidence, I'll support you." Luna had no way out. She knew David's tactics very well, and it was better to expose him now than to be caught later. Luckily, she had stored a lot of videos of her liaisons with David on her backup phone. On the yacht, in hotels, even in the office, almost every video had a close-up of his face. I sneered. David's lecherous face was captured in high definition without censorship. Ada promptly called her lawyer. "Draw up a divorce agreement for me, the kind where the husband leaves with nothing." David, knowing he was in the wrong, started begging. "Ada, I was just momentarily confused. It was her who seduced me, and she set me up. Ada, I promise I won't do it again. Please, don't divorce me." But he didn't finish his sentence before Ada's family elders slapped him. The crowd quickly realized that this guy, who had a beautiful wife at home, was fooling around outside. Seeing Ada's calm expression, David became even more furious. "If you didn't refuse to sleep with me, would I have to look for other women outside? I bet you've been keeping many young lovers yourself, and you've gotten quite close to Tom, haven't you? Dare you say you have nothing going on with him?" I kicked him hard where it hurt. "What kind of man are you to bring up women like that? You deserve your wife's indifference. Get lost." David was hauled away, spouting curses. The scene was chaotic, and many people pitted us, standing under the open sky, As I and Ada exchanged glances, the dog-eat-dog drama had played out perfectly. 3 days ago, I offered $50,000 to provoke David, exposing Luna and David's dirty deeds, preparing for Ada's painless divorce. At the same time, all the prominent families in the city learned about it. And from then on, Ada's family and the Smith family were irreconcilable enemies. But now there was a tricky matter to deal with. I glanced at the baby by the window. What are you going to do with the child? David nervously put a bank card into his pocket. He's a bastard anyway. Just let him go. After everyone left, I picked up the crying baby, looking at the face that bore a striking resemblance to Luna. I had used this child once. I had to make amends. I sent him back to the White family. Only then did I realize that the entrance to the Gu residence was piled with garbage and sealed off. Stock prices plummeted, debts piled up, and in the end, their assets were forcibly seized. The once prosperous aristocratic family had fallen overnight. The board of directors, taking advantage of the scandal, had directly ousted Mr. White from his position. Now, the family of 3 lived in a small house of less than 50 square meters. Luna was no longer the glamorous woman she used to be, and all her valuable jewelry had been sold, leaving her looking pale and haggard. When she saw me holding the child, she finally reacted. "Tom, was it all you're doing?" At that moment, she hated me, was furious at me, and even wanted to kill me. She looked at me as if I were a villain who did all sorts of evil. "I've been so good to you, and you obviously like me all along. So why? Why did you want to harm me?" "Good to me?" I coldly pointed at the people outside the door. "When you conspired with an insider to divert the company's assets, did you ever think about how good I've been to you?" Luna looked at the newcomer, her arrogance fading away. She stared wide-eyed, seemingly unable to believe that I had found out about the person she trusted most. John had been my father's most trusted assistant for 30 years in the company. With his help, I quickly adapted to my role as the heir and learned many skills. I had always treated him as my mentor, but a few days ago, when I carefully examined the company's financial statements, I found discrepancies in several income records, all of which were related to John. I followed the trail and discovered that Luna had registered her own company and taken a share of the profits from these projects. "These funds should be enough for your family for a lifetime, and I don't intend to recover them. Consider it my repayment for Mr. White's support over the years." Luna's face turned bright red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. It wasn't me. But the evidence was right in front of her. Mr. White, furious, slapped her. How could I have given birth to such a heartless creature? By the time I put down the child and left, Luna's entire face had swollen to the size of the sky. Perhaps she felt deeply wronged at that moment, but what was all of this compared to what she had done to me in my previous life? At Ada's company, it was already dark. As soon as I entered, I saw a disheveled man. He was picking up things from the floor and cursing. "I'm your boss's husband. Aren't you afraid of being fired for treating me like this?" The employees responded with cold stares. "If it weren't for our boss's sake, you'd be lucky to leave here standing." David was surrounded by people, and before long, he was left bruised and battered. Most of the things thrown out were decorations he had placed in Ada's office to show off his status. As I walked past, I sneered. Ada had put on a smile and welcomed me inside. "Finally, you're here." The enormous change in his circumstances left David looking pale and disoriented. He even blurted out, "Tom, you wait. My dad won't let you off." But before he could finish speaking, his father, who had arrived shortly after, kicked him to the ground. "You ungrateful son, you've embarrassed us by coming to Ada's company." David was dumbfounded. When he was Ada's family's son-in-law, his father had treated him extremely well, so how could he be willing to take action now? But now, he watched as his father handed over confidential documents. "Sir, what David did has nothing to do with the Smith family. This is my sincerity." The folder contained evidence of David's disruption of the market and vicious competition. Any one of them could leave him unable to recover. I wasn't sentimental either. "I'll take these, and I won't hold the Smith family accountable for the past." Turning to face a stunned David, I smiled and made a phone call. The once glamorous Smith family scion was taken away for questioning and was soon locked up. It was said that he had committed so many crimes that he was sentenced to 20 to 30 years without a chance of parole. Finally, everything was back on track. Under my care, my parents' health became stronger, and they even started to enjoy dancing in the square. At first, I didn't think much of it, until they began urging me to get married and even mentioned meeting a nice girl at the square. Worried that they might be getting scammed, I secretly followed them one day. To my surprise, I saw Ada having a lively conversation with them. The stunning woman exuded confidence and grace, standing out among the elderly crowd. The young men passing by couldn't take their eyes off her, lingering for moments, seeing how proud my parents looked. It was as if they regarded her as their own daughter. I initially wanted to slip away and go back home, but they spotted me and called me over. The dinner was awkward and uncomfortable. My meddling parents even seemed like they were trying to get Ada's background information, constantly signaling me during the meal. They were worried that I couldn't move on from Luna's shadow, but what they didn't know was that I had no interest in marriage and relationships. Even though Ada had extended an olive branch to me multiple times and invited me as her escort to various events, I had no feelings for her, despite her excellence and our apparent compatibility. I couldn't force feelings that weren't there. Another business event came to an end, and I helped Ada into her car. Someone grabbed my shoulder, and she held onto my tie, asking, "Tom, are you really not interested in me?" The rich scent of wine mixed with the refreshing fragrance of perfume tantalized my senses. Her supple skin radiated an alluring glow, like a fruit ready to be plucked. To others, this ripe delicacy was not something to be passed up, but I knew better. Her affection for me was only due to a filter from our youthful past, a filter that painted me as her savior. In my third year of being abducted into the village, I had unintentionally saved a girl who had fallen into the water. The necklace I had on me ended up in her possession. David had taken my identity and married her. At the time, I thought it was a beautiful twist of fate, as long as they were happy. However, when David started cheating and lying, I realized how foolish I had been. How could a clueless man like me deserve someone like Ada? So, I gently removed her hand from my tie. "Ada, being friends is good enough. If you feel this is unfair to you, I can disappear from your life forever." The air grew still. The woman's hazy eyes gradually cleared, until they were filled with a faint mist. She lowered her head and suddenly laughed, saying, "Okay, just friends, that's fine." I didn't see it, but not far from the front of the car, a modestly dressed woman witnessed everything. Luna, seeing Tom in an intimate embrace with another woman, felt like she was going mad. In that moment, she finally realized that she couldn't accept the fact that he no longer loved her. She wanted to go crazy, but in the end, she just touched her faded clothes and suppressed her urge to rush forward. She asked herself, "Isn't all of this my own doing? What right do I have to be angry? I'm no longer worthy of Tom. I schemed to take his property, swallowed his empire. Now I can only make a living by serving others, washing dishes for a living." "Luna, what are you daydreaming about? Quickly serve tea to the guests." The restaurant manager scolded her harshly. The once high and mighty young lady had fallen to the point of being a dishwasher in her own establishment, working under her own employees. The thought of it was too stimulating to bear. The manager snorted and, seeing Luna break another dish, slapped her. "If you can't even handle this, just take your money and leave." Luna was fired. She held the remaining $50 in her hand, her eyes blurred with tears. The two men who had promised her a lifetime had left her behind. The man she had once looked down upon, who had followed her like a loyal dog, was now out of her reach. Her father, who had always been strict, returned all the ill-gotten money to Tom and started working as a salesperson in another company. In his 50s, he was scolded by others and had to apologize humbly. He was truly humble as dirt. Luna suddenly realized how wrong she had been, misjudging people, and being heartless and selfish. She had thought about ending her own life, but when she looked at her crying son, she couldn't bring herself to do it. He was her only connection to Tom. Not long after, I heard that David had a mental breakdown and was sent to a psychiatric hospital. He would sleep clutching his childhood trophy, muttering to himself, "I'm the champion. I'm number one. I'm better than him." Later on, he even forgot who he was. It was 18 years later when I learned about Luna's suicide by drowning. Her child informed me, his eyes slightly teary. "No matter what, she raised me into adulthood." At that time, I had just finished an important meeting and was a bit stunned by the news. Luna, a girl who had been selfish and willful since childhood, had shown such responsibility towards one person. The words she often said to me during her lifetime were, "Become someone who contributes to society. Rely on your own hands. It's more important than anything else." Hearing those words, I smiled faintly. Her son invited me to attend her funeral, but I made up a random excuse to avoid going. I figured she probably didn't want to see me again. Meeting her again would only remind her of her difficult life. This was my last bit of tenderness for her. Extra story 1, Tom. Why did I fall in love with Luna? Perhaps it was because she was a redemption for me. I grew up in the countryside and was not accepted by the city kids. On one hand, it was because I was mute, and on the other hand, because the Brown family wasn't powerful enough at the time. I didn't dare to provoke anyone, fearing it would offend my parents. The kids in my class treated me like their plaything, bullying me, pouring red paint on my seat, trapping me in the restroom, and even cruelly killing a puppy I had brought from the village. I would never forget the sight of that puppy being gutted with its intestines exposed. They taunted and tormented me, and I was helpless. Every time I struggled, they would beat me even harder. Until one day, Luna appeared. She stood with her hands on her hips, holding a wooden stick, and shouted, "Let go of him. I've already called the teacher." The little devils scattered when they saw her coming. Only I remained on the ground, unable to stop crying. I thought Luna would also despise me for being mute, but she helped me wipe away my tears, gently patting my back, and comforting me, saying, "Don't be afraid. I'll protect you in the future." Extra story 2, Luna. When I went to Tom's place to ask for his help with the abortion, he had a very cold look in his eyes. I suddenly felt unsure, worried that he might despise me or be tired of me, even though he had always been passionate and loving towards me, treating me like a little princess. I nervously tapped my own hand, but Tom noticed my action and asked in a deep voice, "Luna, will you always be good to me, right?" I was stunned by this unexpected question and didn't know how to respond. I simply said, "Of course." Then he continued, "You'll never betray me, right?" This time, I closed my mouth, feeling a sense of unease. In my mind, David's face suddenly appeared. He had once said he would take over the Brown family, win over Ada's family, divorce Ada, and marry me, giving me a queen-like life. I felt like my world was collapsing. How could I resist such temptation? I began to avoid Tom's gaze and asked softly, "Tom, what's wrong with you?" In that moment, it seemed like I saw his eyes darken, and after a long pause, he shook his head and said, "It's nothing, just a joke." I breathed a sigh of relief, but as I faced imminent death, all those beautiful fantasies dissolved in the seawater, leaving me with only Tom's disappointed eyes. I finally understood that he had given me a chance that day. As I neared the end of my life, I found peace. I didn't want a second chance. I just wanted to become part of the sea, forever at rest. I didn't want to torment him anymore.